Hey guys, in this video I wanted to go over my Winds of Fate Smite champion that I've been playing for the last few days. So I wanted to make a character around this cool new unique staff called the Winds of Fate. It has over 1000 P DPS, 100% to crit multiplier, 75% conversion to a random element, 25% to chaos, and this pretty massive downside of limiting your crit cap to 50% and your non-critical strikes deal no damage. So as you can imagine, this is a bit of a meme build with a lot of RNG, but by getting the lucky critical strike chance mod, you can mitigate this downside a bit and get to 75% effective crit chance. And despite being a bit of a novelty build, I've been able to clear all endgame content except Uber bosses, including the Feared and clearing the Sanctum pretty easily. But it did take some investment. I probably spent a little over 15 divines or so. And I think that is to be expected, especially being melee on top of being a bit of a meme build. Clearing the Ubers is really hard, but I've actually been pretty happy overall with this build's performance. And yeah, I'm just gonna go over how I've been building this character around this awesome new unique staff. Okay, so this is the character, currently level 97. I'm gonna go over the tree a little bit and talk about some of the choices. If you want a closer look at the tree, you can check out the POB. I'll also include some lower level trees, since I'm currently level 97, maybe some level 90 and 80 trees, as well as a leveling tree. I personally leveled using EA Ballista, since at the start of this league we didn't even know that this unique existed, since it drops from the last boss. If I were to level it now, I would probably level with Bone Shatter. And yeah, okay, so first of all, I'm using this Dance with Death keystone, which is from Brutal Restraint with Asenaths. And it makes it so we can't use helmets, but our crit chance is lucky. And also crit damage against you is lucky. And since we can't use helmets, this restrains us a lot in terms of gearing. So we have to make some maybe a little bit interesting choices, kind of all over the place on the skill tree here. But yeah, we're going up here to get suppression, since we're missing an entire slot for suppression. And yeah, we're taking a lot of crit nodes, staff nodes. This node right here is pretty nice for getting maximum shock value. This exposure node is great when we have the Starlight Chalice Flask. Since we do take extra damage from crits, having this mastery right here is pretty good. We're also using this Hatred Water's Eye to cap our crit. It's pretty easy to cap your crit with Assassin's Mark on the target, but you want to have a decent crit without it as well for clear. And yeah, one of these is pretty expensive. I think I paid 6 divines for this. And yeah, we're also getting Overleech from Forbidden Jewels, from Brutal Fervor, which is really nice, since 25% of the time we're not dealing any damage, so you can walk up to a pack and hit them 2 or 3 times without dealing any damage. So having leech from the pack before is really useful, so I really recommend getting Overleech. These jewels were only about I think 1 divine and 2 divines, so 3 divines in total for the pair, not too bad. And since we have Overleech, I'm using Volpack to get more value out of leech. We're getting life and mana leech from this node right here. We're getting frenzy charges over here, as well as culling strike against marked enemies. And yeah, overall for the tree, you just want suppression, crit stuff, aura stuff. Call to arms is nice to get the instant ancestral cry, which helps out with the clear, getting more strikes against additional targets. Crit mastery here is pretty good. Defenses here. And yeah, if you want a closer look, just check out the POB. And I think that's about it for the regular tree. We are using Champion for a couple of different reasons. Aura effect scales our damage a lot, so Inspirational is really good. It also gives us a free banner. We have pretty much Perma Intimidate, and Adrenaline is a nice bonus. Then we have, of course, Stoppable and Fortitude. So permanent Fortify is really nice since, again, we are missing 25% of the time and you need to actually deal damage to build fortification stacks. So having perma Fortify is really nice, and I think Champion makes a lot of sense for this build. You can get Lucky Crit on belts as well as a focus mod, but I decided to go with this Dance of Death to have just more uptime to make the build feel a little bit more consistent, because even with a lot of cooldown reduction, you're probably only getting about 50% uptime on a focus mod. And it opens up the belt slot to use Perseverance, which again works very well with the champion. But yeah, I'm gonna go over the gear a little bit now. Okay, so like I said, I'm using Perseverance, which gives a bunch of increased attack damage for your armor and evasion, whichever is the lowest. So you want a lot of both. And it gives us permanent onslaught as long as we have Fortify, because yeah, we have permanent Fortify. And yeah, it's a really nice belt for champions, and makes a lot of sense for the Dance of Death version of this build, I guess. And then we're using Dawnstrider, which is really nice. It's a new unique that works with ancestral totems. It makes it so you have a 100% increased effect of the buffs, so we're getting a lot of attack speed from our ancestral protector. And it makes it so the effect lingers for 4 seconds. But you can only use one ancestor totem. But since we are pretty restrained with gem slots anyway, we're only gonna have one totem. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for this build. Gives us a lot of attack speed and makes it so you can have 100% uptime on your ancestral effects, pretty much. So yeah, really nice addition. Try to get it with spell suppression corruption, and then I just got the enchant myself. But you don't need to have the corruption since you can just get better suffixes than I have on your rares. But yeah, really good choice. And then we have Yoke of Suffering. Not really a mandatory unique, but it does give us a good amount of resists and a lot of damage because it gives us bigger shocks, and enemies take more damage based on each type of ailment you inflict on them. And since we are getting all types of elements, we are inflicting all 3 ailments most of the time. And for the rares, yeah, you pretty much just want life, resist, and spell suppression. You want to get one non-channeling skills have minus to mana cost to smooth out your mana a little bit on one of your rings. Getting some intelligence is probably needed to get to be able to use all your gems. And yeah, overall the gearing is a little restrained since you're not using a helm, but pretty simple at the end of the day. And of course, using a Winds of Fate, I was able to get a decently rolled one, 770 from 700 to 800. These are pretty rare, so they are a little bit expensive, but I think they're only about half a divine or something. And again, most of the gear is very cheap. I crafted most of it myself. The only expensive part really is the Hatred Watcher's Eye Jewel. And for the implicits, getting Aura effect and Grace effect or Hatred effect is really good. Getting Rage on your Rage and hit with on your gloves is really nice. That's the only source of Rage that I have. It's mostly just a thing during mapping, but you get a little bit on bosses as well. And yeah, I think that's about it for the gearing. I guess I can go over the flasks here as well. So just using an instant life flask with bleed removal, then Starlight Chalice to get all 3 exposure types, as well as extra effect of non-damaging ailments, so shock and shield. And then I'm trying this new Progenesis flask. It's kind of expensive. I think I paid 3 or 4 divines for it. Yeah, 3 divines. And it's not really necessary, but it does give a petrified blood effect, which makes us a little bit more tanky, as well as some nice chaos res from being an amethyst flask. But you could use a jade flask as well. That's what I used for most of the time. And if you're low on crit, for example, if you don't have a Hatred Watcher's Eye, you could use like a diamond flask or a bottle faith. And then I'm also using a quicksilver flask just to get around a little bit faster. Since we don't have leap slam because we are constrained on gems, I'm just using Flame Dash and a Quicksilver Flask to run around. And then lastly we have Taste of Hate, which is a big damage boost as well as a nice little defensive boost, taking fist damage as cold instead, and then getting a bunch of cold mitigation. Yeah, there's some freedom in the choices of flasks. Use whatever you feel comfortable with. This setup worked pretty well for me, and yeah, I'll go over the gems a little bit. Okay, so for the main links, I'm using Smite and linking it with Anomalous Inspiration, which is very cheap. It's on, I think I got it for 30C or something, which it gives a little bit extra crit chance other than the regular inspiration. And then we have elemental damage with attacks. You don't need the awakened version. It just makes it. It gives you like 5% more damage, and elemental damage from supported skills cannot be reflected. So it helps with things like Uber Pinnacle, or if you want to roll elemental reflect maps. And then we have faster attacks instead of multi-strike, because multi-strike felt really awkward with this build. First of all, our attack speed is pretty slow, and also if the first attack doesn't crit, the repeats don't crit as well, so then you're stuck there in an well, you're not completely stuck, but yeah, all the repeats also don't crit, and then you're not dealing any damage, and it just feels really awkward. So I went with faster attacks instead of multi-strike. And then increased critical damage. Well, since all our hits are crits, this is just a more multiplier. It's really good. And then we have Trinity. Since we're using all three elements, you get Trinity pretty much for free, and it gives us a lot of penetration through that. And yeah, pretty straightforward on the Smite setup. And then for the auras, I'm using Precision with Arrogance and Defiance Banner. Since Defiance Banner is free because of being a champion with Inspirational, there's no downside to linking it with Arrogance. And then it just smooths out the mana a bit using Precision, which reserves a flat amount. Putting that on your life is pretty sweet. And then we have Grace, Hatred, and Determination with an Enlighten. So a lot of our damage comes from Hatred because we have so much fist damage. And yeah, Hatred, Grace, Determination. Grace and Determination gives obviously a lot of defenses. We have like 46k armor and 41k evasion. And that also scales our damage because of Perseverance. And yeah, it's kind of a standard choice for champions, I guess. And then we have Blood Rage in our ring. So using one unset ring I would recommend doing that, since we are missing 4 gem slots. So using an unset ring is pretty nice. You can get Blood Rage here. Ancestral Cry, again, put that on left click and it just gives us more strikes. Or strikes to additional targets and a little armor buff and yeah, a little bit more damage. And then we have Flame Dash as our main mobility skill, since we can't fit in a Leap Slam. And even if I did, you would want to have both, or you would probably use Frost Blink at that point, because with Frost Blink you can attack while you're teleporting, and you can't do that with Flame Dash. But since if you can only have one movement skill, I would still always pick Flame Dash, because it just it's a lot more reliable with 3 stacks. And yeah. Ancestral Protector, again, just gives us a bunch of attack speed because of the boots as well, and it's really easy to have 100% uptime. And then we have Cast with Damage Taken for Molten Shell. Since we have a lot of armor, that whenever you have Molten Shell up, you pretty much can't die. Kind of wanted to use a Vol Molten Shell, but since we're using a Vol Smite, I just decided to stick with only Vol Smite. Yeah. And then we have Assassin's Mark with Mark and Hit. I just flipped this for 20% call to it. You should try to get level 20 on it. And if you're having mana issues, you could remove from Mark and Hit. You could just self-cast it and not use Mark and Hit. And that would allow you to remove some reservation nodes. So if you're lower level, that's something that I could recommend doing. Or you could just use a level 1 Assassin's Mark or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the gems, I guess. And I don't want to drag this on too long. It's a bit of a meme build again, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And yeah, it's overall a pretty successful meme build, I would say. So I'm gonna leave you guys with a feared kill and a Maven kill, and thanks for watching. Oh yeah, one more thing. I wanted to demonstrate how you can actually almost double your damage using Smite by positioning. So first of all, you can see if I'm hitting the ground, there's sort of like one area of damage that you can see. But with an additional strike, you can actually get both the initial hit and the area hit from, or sorry, you can get the hit from your additional strike and then also the area damage from your hitting the ground. So as you can see, this is like one ring, one area of damage. But if I'm hitting the mob, or just sort of like next to the mob, you're gonna see my additional strike is appearing, and you're seeing 2 rings essentially under the mob. And that means both your area damage from hitting the ground is hitting, as well as the initial hit from your additional strike. So as you can see there's 2 rings under the boss. This little guy is appearing there and hitting the target. And yeah, this is what makes Smite sort of a viable skill for a single target. 1 hit, 2 hits. Yeah, that's all. Enjoy the video.
returned tenfold. Space aligns. Behold my connection.
I will have what I want. It will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Stand still. A cascade of pain. A cascade of pain.
Death made real.
Stand still. Why?
Resistance will be punished. Time contorts. Scurry. Scurry.
My meditation is growing. It will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Do what I
Death
say.
made real.
Cascade of pain. Do what I say.
Real.
Stand still. Oh,
Stop resisting. Reality bends.